Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Dividends in arrears paid off through the issuance of bonds. Get ready, it's time to take our chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Information on the left-hand side, we're going to populate that into the blue area on the right-hand side, looking into the calculation of preferred stock in arrears once again. But now the issuance of the bonds in order to pay off the preferred stock will be our added component versus the prior problem we took a look at. So information in more detail, we got the dividends in arrears, going to be 5 years overdue basically on the dividends to the preferred stockholders that have not yet been paid. So we'll have to calculate what that will come out to. Preferred stock outstanding is going to be the 500,000. Annual preferred dividends per share is going to be $3 per share. So plan to compensate preferred stockholders with percent of the dividends in arrears. So we're going to want to basically pay off. We're going to try to come up with an agreement with the preferred stockholders to pay off 80%. And we plan to be doing so by issuing bonds in order to pay it off. So we'll have to figure out how many bonds we're going to issue. The rate on the bonds is going to be the 11%. Maturity in 20 years. Par value, the par value per bond is $1,000, and they're going to be semi-annual bonds. We have a market rate of the 9%. So first we'll try to calculate how much is owed to the preferred stockholders since it hasn't been paid in a while. So we're going to say the annual dividends per share. Annual dividends per share, we said we're going to be equal to 3. So they owe $3 per share. Got to pay it each year in general. If you don't, then it accumulates upwards. That's the dividends in arrears. So we're going to say the preferred shares outstanding are the 500,000. 500,000. Underlining that by going to the Home tab, Font Group, and Underline. And we're going to have an annual amount then of the 3 times the 500,000. That's going to be the annual dividend that would need to be paid if you're going to pay dividends. Clearly, if you want to pay dividends out to common stockholders, then typically you have to pay the preferred stockholder first and then pay the excess to the common stockholders. If you don't want to pay any dividends, then possibly you can do so, but typically the dividends will then accumulate for the preferred stockholders, and they have done so for the number of years. We're going to say years in arrears are going to be the 5 years in arrears. So we're going to go to the Font Group and Underline, and then that's going to give us our arrear age. And you might hear that term, arrear age. I would call it dividends in arrears for 5 years on that, but just note you might hear that term. So we're going to say the 1,500,000 times 5, that's the dividend in arrear age, and that's going to be the 7,500,000 that's going to be due for the preferred stockholders. Now we're going to be planning to compensate them. We're going to try to negotiate and say, hey, look, we don't think we're going to pay that. It's getting kind of large here. How about we pay you, we're going to make a deal hopefully to pay the 80% and do so with the issuance of the bonds to do so. So if we were able to come up with a plan like that, we could say, all right, well, how much then would we now have to pay with the bonds if the dividends and the arrear age were 7,500,000, and we're going to then say that we want 80% of that. 80% of that, we're going to say that the planned compensation is going to be equal to the 7,500,000 times the 80%. Let's make that 80% a percent number group, percentify it, Font Group, and Underline it. So we'd have to be paying then the 6 million. So then we're going to think about, all right, well, now we're going to issue the bonds in order to pay that off. If we look at the bonds that we're thinking of issuing, we're going to say that the bonds have a rate on the bond of the 11%. They mature in 20 years. The par value per bond is going to be $1,000, and they pay interest semi-annually. The current market rate is at the 9%. So, and the rate on our bond is the 11%. So we would think we would get to issue these at some kind of premium in order to pay these off. So let's figure out how much it would be at the premium per bond, what's going to be the value of each bond, and then we'll think about how many bonds we're going to need in order to pay off the 6 million. So we'll say, all right, present value of the bond. If you want to go back to prior presentations when we talk about present value in particular, and with regards to bonds in particular, take a look at those. We're just going to do these calculations with Excel function here. The typical idea of the present value of the bonds is to take the present value of the interest payments, which is going to be the 11% times the 1,000 divided by 2 because they're semi-annual, and then present value the payment at the end of the bonds, which would be this 1,000 at the end of the 20 years. So we'll do those two streams and then sum them up. So present value of interest is going to be, and I'm just going to use an Excel function or formula to do so, negative present value. And then we're going to say shift 9 for the present value formula. So negative present value, shift 9, we're picking up the rate. The rate is going to be the 9%, the market rate, but the rate is for a year. You'll recall generally when we see a rate, it's for a year, and we have a semi-annual thing going on here. So we need the rate per 6 month or per half a year. So I'm going to divide by 2 and then comma. Then we have the number of periods. The number of periods would be 20 if they were annual, but once again, semi-annual, twice as many periods. Therefore, we're going to take that 20 times 2 to get to the 40, comma, and then this is the payment. The payment is going to be the 1,000 times the 11% interest rate on the bond, but that would be for a yearly payment, and this is going to be semi-yearly or every 6 months, so we're going to take that 11%. You can think about it and divide it by 2, or you can think about it as the 11% times the 1,000 divided by 2. Same thing. So we're going to say divided by 2. And that's it. Close it up. And so there we have that. So there's the present value of the interest. And now let's take the present value of the par value or the maturity amount at the end of the bond that would have to be paid. That's going to be the 1,000 that we're going to bring back. So this is present value of one formula, negative present value, shift 9, the rate, market rate, once again, 9%, but that's going to be for the entire year. So we take that, we divide it by 2 to give us the 6-month rate, comma. Number of periods, once again, 20, but that's for years. We have semi-years, semi-annual, so twice a year, in other words. So we're going to take that and multiply it times 2 to get to the 40, comma. We don't have a payment this time because this is a present value of 1 as opposed to a present value of an annuity, comma, comma. And if that's confusing to you, again, take a look at the prior presentations when we focus in on present value calculations in general and bonds in general. So 2 separate sections, you can look into that and do problems till your heart's delight, because we do a lot of them there. And then we're going to go to the 1,000, bring that back, close it up, and there it is, 172. So then we're going to have the bond value is going to be equal to the sum of those two items. And there we have it. So that's the value of the bond. Let's add some decimals here. So let's go to the numbers, add a couple pennies. And let's do the underline here just to make it look nice. Font group and underline. So there we have it. So we're going to issue them at the premium. So if we're going to try to pay off 80% or the $6 million with bonds that have a premium of $1,184.02, how many bonds would we then have to issue? So we're going to say, all right, that's easy to do. That's easy. We're going to say now we got the planned compensation is the $6 million, and the bond has a value of $1,184.02. So then that's going to give us the bonds needed to be issued, we'll call it. That's the 6 million divided by the 1184.02. Let's add some decimals to these two. Obviously, we might not be able to issue, 0.5 of a bond, so we might have to round this in some way or another, but we're going to go to the font group and underline. There we have it. So we're going to have to issue those bonds. That's the plan. So plan is, we've got these dividends in arrears for the preferred stock. We want to pay them off, but we can't because we waited too long. It's getting ridiculous. So we came up with a plan that they agreed to. Hopefully, would pay off 80% by issuing bonds to them. And we figured out the present value of the bonds, and then figured out that we can issue this many bonds, hopefully, to pay off the preferred stockholders to take down that obligation. So possibly we can give some money maybe to the common stockholders after that, which would be nice because they might be upset at this point. So that's the plan.